Welcome back, Darren Hendrick.
Good to be back.
Good to have you back. How's the farm? It's been a while, actually.
Yeah, man, it's been a minute.
It has been a minute, yeah, absolutely. So today we are going to do episode number 3 of our Get Rich Without Getting Lucky trade by Naval Ravikant.
How to get rich without getting lucky.
How to get rich without getting lucky. Have you had much feedback on the last 2 episodes? Because I have.
Yeah, I have had some positive insight or input just on, I suppose, some value that people have got from it, which has been nice. For sure.
Deadly. Yeah, I've gotten loads of feedback.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of people have said to me about this. If you're listening now and you haven't listened to episode 1 and 2 of this, I'll give you a very brief outline of what we're doing. Go back and listen to those episodes, obviously. But Naval Ravikant, serial entrepreneur, angel investor, big hero of myself and Darren here, a guy we look up to a lot, has put together a tweet storm, which is essentially a Twitter thread of principles that he believes will help you to generate your own personal wealth, but also your own personal growth and development. Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely. He outlined in a tweet storm a series of thoughts on how to, I suppose, a map for how to increase your probability of generating wealth. But his definition of wealth expands to that more than just finance and goes into, I suppose, some spiritual thoughts and Yeah, perfect. So all of that is in our previous 2 episodes. So go back and listen to episode 1 and episode 2 before this. What we're going to do is we've gone through several of the series of tweets, and we've shared our thoughts. Yeah.
We're going to carry that on right now.
Absolutely.
So the next one we're going to jump onto is play iterated games. All the returns in life, whether in wealth, relationships, or knowledge, come from compound interest. Mr. Hendrick, take it away.
Yeah, and just, I suppose, to say firstly that we're just exploring here. You know, this is what we're doing. Point. We're going through his thoughts and we're trying to understand them better ourselves. So playing iterated games with iterated people, is it? Just to clarify.
Just to clarify for you, yeah. Play iterated games. All the returns in life, whether in wealth, relationships, or knowledge, come from compound interest.
Yeah, so my initial thoughts there are, to iterate is to just improve at a slow but consistent rate. So, improving 1% per day, and then that leads to compound interest. You see that a lot with, I suppose, online businesses where they put up a lot of upfront work and consistent work, and they might not get results, but then it grows exponentially after a certain amount of time, which is a compounding, and they get big results. So they're my initial thoughts.
Yeah. I suppose most people will be familiar with those the phrases you've used there, compound interest and all that kind of stuff from the financial world. But recently there has been a lot more people in the personal development sphere. Like everyone's familiar with James Clear. And
he talks about that quite a bit, yeah.
He talks about compound interest and this idea of, as he said, improving small amounts. And I talk about this a lot, and I have been exploring this a lot recently in terms of the process, loving the process as opposed to the outcome. And the outcome will take care of itself through the kind of phenomenon of compounding if you're focusing on the day-to-day. If you tend to focus on the outcome, the day-to-day suffers and you don't actually build that consistency required to generate that interest. And the interesting thing, we were looking at it just before we jumped on here as well, with that, the way it works is it's exponential. So it's not just day 1 plus day 2 plus day 3 equals outcome. It's day 1 and then day 2 is a kind of a growth on day 1 as well, because now you've improved. Like say if we're talking on habit formation now, so let's keep it money for a second. If you have €1 on day 1 and €2 on day 2, on day 3 it's the compound from €2, not from day 1, which is €1. So it's the same with habit formation. You're constantly improving, and then you're compounding on the improvement, not just on the original effort that you've put in.
Yeah, and to use finance as the example. If you're saving €1 a day if you're saving €1 a day and you're getting 10% off whatever money you have, like 10% maybe off €1 isn't much. And after 5 days, when it's €5, 10% off that's a little bit more, but it's still not much. But then after a year, €365, 10% is significantly more off the 365. So I suppose when you break that down into whether it's skill development or working on your business or habit formation, it is marginal, the kind of returns on your investment of energy to begin with. But after a year, it starts to kind of go pretty steeply upwards as opposed to linear, because the 10% represents a lot more after a year than it does 6 months in or 3 months in.
100%.
And then that just translates to other areas.
Yeah. I feel like this is one of those things that most people know and they're aware of, but it's really difficult to actually implement because we don't get that immediate return. We have to trust the process. If we're talking in the span of years here, not days or weeks or months, it's very hard to commit yourself to something, especially nowadays, that you don't see an immediate return on.
Yeah.
So it's a simple principle, but again, I think why Naval includes it here is because obviously for wealth creation, it's very effective if you're saving money or investing money, whatever like that. As we have done in the last 2 episodes as well, like I like to apply these to general life because I know I've mentioned this. If you're building something like wealth, or if you're building a body, or if you're building a business, or building anything, it requires you to become a different type of person with a different skill set. So you're leveling up in order to achieve these things. And if you're compounding in your daily life, whether it's with your health or with your relationship or with your community or with your business or with your brand, whatever it is, you're becoming a better person by doing the process that's compounding. So you're getting the return and the value off the thing that you're doing, but you're also getting more. You're getting personal development and growth because you're doing this thing every single day. So like say it's writing, for example. We were talking about writing earlier on. If you are a writer and you write every day, for a week, after a week, you write a page a day. After a week, you'll have 7 pages, but after a year, you'll have 365 pages. But probably more because as you write, you'll get better at the process of writing. Yeah. So now you might be able to write 2 pages a day because of the process. So now your compounding is benefiting you in even more ways. So there's multiple benefits to trusting this process, but you only start to see them after a period of time has elapsed. And many of us stop with our habits. Like we're coming up to a period of time now when this is released, it'll almost be the new year, where most people will start a process that they'll never finish. And the big one is going to the gym. And the gym is a great example of compound interest because you don't see results after a day or a week or a month. Oftentimes it's 5 or 6 months before you even start to see results. So you have to find a way to love the process. And by doing that, you become the type of person who is disciplined, who is who can stick to a schedule, who starts to understand about nutrition and their body and is becoming healthier every single day, even though you mightn't see the result that you want for quite a period of time.
Yeah. How do you fall in love with the process then?
It's a great question. Because I struggle to fall in love with the process, but I think
is that even required to fall in love with it? I suppose that's the kind of idea of discipline, isn't it? To do something that you don't want to do, even, to do something that you want in the long term, even if you don't want to do it in the short term, like getting out of bed to go to the gym. I do think how do people create that long term change in themselves? Because you don't love it every day and you don't want to show up or in the process of iterating. And maybe that's where the idea of like SMART goals are really important. Specific and actionable, and having like milestones that you're aiming for, and rewards. I think maybe that's where it can be really important if you want to stick to something long term and iterate daily.
Yeah, because it's a good question. Because I've mentioned this before. I struggle to fall in love with our process. But I think, and to borrow some kind of theories from James Clear here, I think those other benefits I mentioned, for example, let's use exercise. It's hard to get out of bed and go to the gym or whatever, but there's a feel good factor after the gym. So if you can retrain your reward model, so I'm not going to look like an Adonis when I walk out of the gym. I'm going to have massive biceps and be jacked. So that's not the reward I'm going to get, but I'll feel better. Yeah, my day will be better, and I'll have more energy. If you can retrain your brain to view those things as rewards, as opposed to, because like we are desensitizing our brain to certain rewards like that. Bless you.
Oh, excuse me.
With like obviously there's a dopamine crisis at the moment, and all that kind of stuff. So we there's a battle we're fighting there. But if this is a theory, these are not my words now. If we can retrain our brain to find pleasure in the simple things, then it makes it easier to just enjoy the process. And it all kind of leans into the wellness sphere as well, about enjoying the simple things in life and finding pleasure and going for a walk and having a cup of tea and all that kind of stuff. You have to train yourself to do it though. Yeah. Because I don't love training, but I love how I feel after I train. Like I don't actually love training. Sometimes in the process of training, I get that kind of peace from mind, maybe as Naval would say, a peace of mind. I'm not thinking about anything else, and that's nice. But I don't love the process of training because oftentimes it's really hard, especially if it's running or something like that. Like you're 20 minutes into a 40-minute run, you're like, fuck this, I don't love that. But how I feel afterwards, I do love. So maybe finding a way to train yourself to appreciate that feeling you have afterwards. And then look at people like kind of Conor O'Keefe, for example. He practices a lot of gratitude around training. He goes out to do some seriously horrible training, but he actively practices gratitude, and he says, I'm very grateful that I can train here because lots of people can't. And now his perspective on the training is different. Now he gets the training done. So he doesn't actually love the training, but he learns to love that process.
So it's, I get to do this as opposed to I have to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's that whole, like people say, find your passion and you'll never have to work a day in your life. But if you're passionate about something and you have to turn into your work, most likely it's going to
it's a fucking grind, man.
Have an impact on your passion around it.
Yeah.
So I think, starting small and iterating can be very powerful to sticking with it long term. So if that's you wanting to build a business, whether it's you wanting to develop your like writing or whatever skill, trying to implement into your routine daily, but just doing it for a small period of time. So like 5 minutes a day to begin with, or 10 minutes a day. And then, iterating on that potentially could let you stick to it and keep it sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the more you're talking there, the more I'm like, it is all about perspective. Like even if it is, let's make it a little bit more relevant again to building personal wealth or freedom or business or brand or whatever that is. If you shift your perspective on what that thing that you're doing is, as in like say it's writing for your business, you're writing copy for an ad or for a piece of social media content or something like that. It's a bit boring, it's a bit of a grind. But if you shift your perspective in terms of, I get to do this now because I've decided to build this business or grow this brand, and the more of this I do, I'm accepting, I'm changing my perspective on what this is. I'm not looking for immediate return. I'm not looking for people to give me a like or a thumbs up or whatever. Because this is a big thing with me, but like doing social media posts and stuff like that. I'd spend some time planning it, writing it, shooting it, editing it, and posting it, and nobody'd like it. That's fucking crushing. But it's only crushing because of the perspective I have on that. Now I look at this as a big picture game, and like you're doing with your Twitter at the moment. I am going to create this content because I am trusting the long-term process. I understand the effect of compound interest. I'm now trusting the process. Now it's a totally different thing to me. Now I look forward to doing these posts because now I'm not expecting anything from the post.
Yeah.
And what has now reinforced that is months and months or years later now, I'm starting to get people reaching out to me and responding and engaging with my content consistently now. And this never happened before. And it's the same type of content. But now more and more people are reaching out and engaging. I'm like, oh, now it's working. So now I have some positive reinforcement. So now I want to do it even more.
Great.
So I learn to love that process more because I know the results are going to come there. Yeah. Similarly with my training. Same thing with my training. I know from years, 20 years plus of training, the results don't come the next day.
Yeah.
But I know in a couple of months' time, I'm going to feel better, be stronger, move quicker, whatever it is. So it's now reinforced that for me. So maybe that's where the learning to love the process comes. It's not just like, right, I have to learn, I have to love this and the thinking really hard to love it. It's about doing it until you start to appreciate it in a different light.
Yeah.
So it's a practice.
Definitely. And getting through the, initial learning curve can be a struggle, but nearly doing that can give you the confidence and can allow you to develop the passion for it or the enjoyment.
Who talks about this? There's a couple of people talk about this at the moment, about proving to yourself, do shit. Because by doing shit, you've proven to yourself that you can do shit. And you can do more shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know it's very reductionist as opposed to in a certain way, but like the more things you do, the more you're proving to yourself that you can do things. So the more confidence you get, the more momentum you get. And then the more you learn to trust your processes.
Yeah.
And like the whole discipline side of things is really important as well, as not relying on motivation. But the more stuff you do, the more stuff you know you can do. So you're kind of building your own sense of capability.
Confidence.
And confidence. Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of this tweet as a whole, because we talked about lots of different nuanced areas there, is this something you think, well, obviously it is because Naval said it, but is this something you build into how you are planning your career or brand or what direction?
Yeah, can you just maybe repeat it there once more just so we can get a
Play iterated games. All the returns in life, whether in wealth, relationships, or knowledge, come from compound interest.
Yeah. Yeah, look, always thinking long term and what I'm doing today and every day, how that's going to compound and like show a result over time. I think it's important and it's a great point by Naval.
What's an example of how you're doing that at the moment?
I suppose like, habit formation, trying to meditate every day and then trying to increase that, knowing that like it's going to pay dividends in a couple of years. Or not even dividends in a couple of years. Like it's benefiting me now, but as I increase my time doing that in a couple of years, I'm going to be a better person for it, and how it influences my behavior. Yeah. How about you?
With me, it's very relevant at the moment because I actually work with a lot of people as well as myself who create a lot of content around for their community, around the value, around their expertise, around what they're doing, and that point I mentioned earlier on about the tools that we currently have, social media, podcasts, blogs, newsletters, all that kind of stuff. It's almost inescapable, that feeling of emptiness or frustration when you post something, you don't get immediate satisfaction. But specifically, I had a conversation yesterday with my clients and we've been doing some social media content for them. And I hammered the drum of, we're going to ignore these numbers for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And like, what do you mean ignore the numbers? It's like, because it doesn't really mean anything at the start.
Yeah.
We're going to just be comfortable creating. Now, I can say this, it's hard for me to escape it personally, but I can help other people do it sometimes. And the more comfortable these people get, and this client yesterday specifically, over the last 3 months, has started to see some serious growth, some great feedback, some great engagement. But they've really enjoyed the process. So they've gotten multiple benefits there. And now it's starting to go direction they wanted to go. And it's still really early days. So for me, from a business perspective, this is a very, very, very valuable tool. And it's something I have to constantly remind myself of as well. Like podcasts like this, we put a lot of time, effort and energy. We've come out to the studio, we've thought about this, we've planned it out, we've had some discussions around it, we've recorded, it's been edited, it's been distributed by the time it gets to people's ears now. And if that doesn't do as well as the number we have in our head that we think it should do, we might be a little bit underwhelmed. And I know both of us have these conversations regularly, like have we gotten feedback? Is any good? Is anybody listening? Whereas with constantly being reminded of this is an iterated game for me and you, from both our perspectives. Like we know in the bigger picture, doing this is making us better at doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also focus our attention on the conversation itself and promoting our own thoughts and getting us to think. So just the interaction we're having is beneficial to the two of us. Obviously, having people listening and getting feedback is a positive. It's positive to get that feedback for sure, but like you said, focusing on the process, focusing on now and finding enjoyment of that, like the rest generally comes, I suppose.
Yeah. I feel like we're underselling the power of compound here, but I don't really have any more to say on that. Like it's very, very powerful in all areas of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We move to the next one?
Let's do it.
Okay. So the next one is pick business partners with high intelligence, energy, and above all, integrity.
So, do you want to fire away with that one?
Okay, I'll take this one first. The big one that jumps out to me there is integrity. Business partners is a funny one, as we both know, actually. But business partners is a really funny one because different people have different incentives and have different visions for what they want to do with their life. And when you go into business with someone, the same as when you go into a relationship with someone, you're not always perfectly aligned on the vision or what might be in your head. Oftentimes, because you're not often clear in your own head what that vision is. So it can cause conflict very, very quickly. So picking business partners, just like picking romantic partners, just like picking your friends, I feel is a really, really, really important endeavor. Like a lot of people are now familiar nowadays saying like, show me the 5 people you're surrounded by, I'll show you who you are, and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of talk about leaving behind toxic people in your circles, anybody who drags you down, all that kind of stuff. It's quite a prevalent conversation in the wellness space and the mental health space at the moment. And I think rightfully so, because if you're not careful with the people that you do things that are really important in your life with, like play football with people, that's fine. It's not going to necessarily affect your life. Live with somebody, that's a big decision. Start a business with somebody where you're both financially dependent on it, it's a massive decision.
And you're going to be operating in a stressful environment.
Oh yeah, massive stress. So you add stress to the bucket. They say you don't really know someone until you live with them. And I would add to that, and until you actually run a business with them, like, because it's intimate, it's a stressful environment, there's a lot riding on it, your security is involved, your sense of self is involved. So I think it's really, really important. So the last bit there, obviously you want somebody who's intelligent, who can add to the pot.
What does integrity mean for you? You know, if someone is thinking about a business partner and they think about what is integrity like, you know, what does that mean to you in a business partnership? Is it someone that, you know, is principled, is honest, is genuine, is conscious, or could you expand on that?
Yeah, I think exactly the words you mentioned there. I think most problems in a relationship, in this case a business relationship, can be either avoided or managed with those characteristics. Honesty is a big one. Honesty and a willingness to be vulnerable and
Wrong.
Communication, a willingness to communicate effectively with the other person, to park the ego to a certain degree, and to acknowledge that there are multiple entities involved in this. And I know we mentioned before, like we've been involved in several kind of projects and stuff like that as well. And I had a problem in certain instances. We talked about this in a previous podcast as well. Like, and we were able to manage that. You're still here. I'm still here. We were able to manage that quite well between us because I believe you're a person with integrity. So that worked out, and we were able to maintain our friendship. So when I see that word integrity, I think about like, how did we work through that? We communicated. It took me a while now, but we communicated. You created a space, and if I created a space where we were able to be vulnerable and open with each other. Obviously the other stuff, like what was the other one? Intelligent energy. Energy is a big one as well. If your energies aren't matched, that can affect how fast you're moving, the direction you're going in, how much effort you're willing to put in, and it's not that you have to be matched, but if you're not, it's going to cause a bit of a lopsidedness in any relationship as well. So, the words you mentioned there are really, really important, but communication and honesty are big ones for me. What about you?
I wonder how someone deciding to go into a business relationship with someone would uncover or, you know, be confident that the person that they're going into business with has integrity and they're aligned in that way. How would you? Is that a judgment call? Is that something that you just kind of have to have a certain amount of exposure before you make a commitment to someone to go into business?
How would you do it in a romantic relationship or a friendship? If you just meet somebody, what's the process you go through to like, okay, I'd like this person to be a little bit more involved in my life?
Yeah, I suppose there's exposure over a period of time before you make any big commitments. So that gives you a better idea, and you develop your judgment, or you have a deeper understanding of the other person. So does that mean you need to hang out with the person you're going to go into business with, or?
Yeah, I think potentially, and again, as you can hear, me and Darren are not experts in this situation at all, but I think potentially you want to create a situation where you can stress test the relationship, maybe. Whether that's having a couple of really honest conversations and then using your judgment, because this is all about judgment at the end of the day, using your judgment to see if both of you are in the same place, if you've both brought equal amounts of integrity, honesty, communication to the table. The other bits are a little bit more measurable, like what are the practical skills, what are the benefits and the experience and the other parts of the business that this person's bringing, and what am I bringing? Can we lay that on the table? That's measurable. So am I putting money in? Am I putting skill in? Am I putting time in? Who's doing what? What's the responsibilities? That's all measurable stuff.
Yeah.
And then I think that you have to use your judgment and create an environment before any lines are signed or anything like that, where you can stress test those different elements. And I think, I mean, what's a way to do that? Go hiking together. I don't know. Have a deep conversation together, and then use your judgment to make a call on it. Yeah,
and it could be just having a frank conversation. You know, you trying to understand better, I suppose, what is important to you, and then having a conversation and be outspoken about traits or behaviors in the partnership. And yeah, like you said, using your judgment based off the interaction to decide, make a judgment call from there. But yeah, judgment, I think, is the key word there, isn't it?
Yeah.
And being confident in your judgment.
And maybe leading by example to a certain degree.
Yeah.
You lay it out on the table, you be vulnerable, you be honest, you be open, and gauge some reaction, gauge some engagement there, see how that person responds to that. That'll give you a pretty good idea as well. And like, it's funny with this kind of stuff. Obviously, you don't have to be aligned on everything. That's not how it works. It's not how it works in a romantic relationship or a friendship or anything like that. But there has to be an acknowledgement on the important topics.
Yeah.
And like you can opposites can often complement each other, as we know. But I feel like there's a certain collection of areas where you have to be in agreement. Even if you disagree on some certain principles, you have to be in agreement on how we're going to manage this within the relationship. And like, again, I'm bringing this back to friendships and romantic relationships.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
stuff. You don't have to agree on everything, but you have to agree that if you don't agree on something, you have a way to manage it. And I remember my dad telling me when I was leaving college, I was planning this little business when I was leaving college with 3 of my friends in the class, and the first thing he said to me was, "Oh yeah, fine, starting a business, whatever like that. Everything goes down on paper. You all agree on everything before you start, because inevitably things will happen. And once you have a method for dealing with those things, that's fine. If you don't have a method and you just rely on the friendship or rely on like handshakes and stuff like that, he said it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
And you see this over and over again with families when money gets involved and business gets involved. You see it quite regularly because there's no ground rules established. That it gives you something to fall back on where you don't have to stress your personal relationship, especially if you're getting into business with friends and family. So, but yeah, I think having some way of stress testing that, some methodology, and then outlining the framework for how it's going to work going forward, and then constantly revisiting that, I think is important as well, because people grow and evolve and things change, and the landscape can change, the business can change, something can happen. So constantly reevaluating that, and giving yourself a way to extract from that situation until you're a lot more comfortable and confident in it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ifs and buts there, but
No, nice.
yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely.
We move on from that one?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's keep going. We're rolling here. We're flying. Okay, so let's pick a business partner. Next one is don't partner with cynics. This is kind of a similar one. Don't partner with cynics and pessimists. Their beliefs are self-fulfilling.
Yeah, it's an important one, and it's very relevant to the previous point. And like you said about everyone is pretty much aware that who you expose yourself to, you're influenced by and become the average of. So if you're going into a business with someone, it's going to be a very stressful environment, getting things off the ground. And if you have someone that's thinking in a pessimistic way by default, which means that they're always looking at the negative side of things, they're looking at the issues, the problems, this is what catches their attention, as opposed to a solution-based mindset that can be incredibly problematic, I think, for the success of the business or for development. Yeah, again, it's one of those things it applies to all relationships. That's why I love Naval stuff, because it's like the crabs in a bucket thing. If you're surrounded by negative people, you'll be much more likely to have that groupthink with those people. Your thoughts will be a lot more negative. Like, you know yourself, if you've ever gone to a party with everyone, there's always people, everything they say, the job is negative, the relationship is negative, everything is negative. And you find yourself, I actually remember a specific example here. I was working on Dublin Port, and this is not, I'm not throwing shade in Dublin Port here, or the lads who were down there. Loads of amazing people worked for Dublin Port and the security and stuff like that. But there are certain people who in environments like that, their day-to-day is negative. It's giving out about the job. It's giving out about the boss. It's giving out about the customers, the clients, the people who come across it. Everything is negative. And very quickly, I found myself, if I was exposed to those people in certain environments, in certain areas of the job for more than 5 or 6 minutes, I would start to think that way as well. I get a bit pissed off at the customers or the boss. It must be the fucking work. Whereas beforehand, it wasn't like that at all. Yeah.
So it is really contagious. So in that kind of environment, it's difficult. If you're starting something as important as a business, and you're going to have, as you said, really important decisions to make, there's going to be money involved, there's going to be stress. You have a responsibility to the business, to each other, to yourself. If that's all negative, that's a one-way ticket.
Yeah.
That's a one-way ticket to disaster.
I think it's incredibly crucial that you have a solution-based mindset if you're going into business, because inevitably you're going to have so many hurdles and issues arise, and you need to problem solve and focusing on the issue or the problem, which tends to be a quality of the pessimistic mind, is just going to, you're going to hit a wall and you won't get over it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point as well, actually. You can't you create problems when you're negative.
Yeah.
You don't solve them, like. And again, it comes back to your perspective on this stuff. Something could happen and you could view it as an opportunity or a challenge or a fucking disaster.
Yeah.
And that's just a mindset piece.
And is it like, generally when you have your mind populate with, pessimistic thoughts, they do become self-fulfilled prophecies. So
yeah. What do you make of that self-fulfilling bit?
I think it's pretty appropriate. Like, there's the reality experience in your mind, and then there's the actual objective reality. And our brain is constantly creating a virtual reality inside our minds that we're reacting to and we're responding to. Yeah. So if you have a pessimistic mind, you're constantly looking at the world in a negative way. That's how you experience, and that shapes your behavior, it shapes your attitude, and even how you express yourself. So, therefore, it all does, become self-fulfilling, I think.
Yeah. As you're speaking there, it's interesting because it's like the word manifestation, and I know it's a contentious topic. There's a lot of different thoughts on this. I personally believe, I don't know where I am on the whole thinking it will happen, like this whole The Secret and all that kind of stuff. I'm a big believer in the power of action. However, if your thoughts are positive, you tend to take more positive actions, more forward moving options, more options that generate momentum. If you're negative thinking, as you've just explained there, you tend to make decisions that drive less action. You tend to sit in your ass a little bit more. You tend to have a little bit more pity for yourself, a little bit more, a little bit less. You're a little bit less likely to actually do the things that will have positive outcomes. So whether it's magic dust or not, the way you think definitely shapes the world around you, because you then shape the world around you by how you interact with it.
Yeah.
Especially with people. If you interact with people in a negative way, they tend to have a negative response, which they tend to carry forward. I think I've made this point a few times. Was it an on-post ad or something? One of the couriers, there was an ad where I think the delivery driver was late with the delivery, and the guy in the office who was getting the delivery was pissed off, and then he shouted at his kid, and the kid went into school and was pissed off at the teacher, and the teacher went home and was the wife of the delivery driver, and it was all one big loop, and everyone was just pissing each other off. So it's the power of how we can influence the environment around us with our own emotions and thoughts. So that's what I would look at here as well. Like if you're constantly surrounded by those negative people, they're going to influence you, and by turn they're going to influence them. So it's like a positive feedback loop in a negative way. You're constantly reinforcing the negativity. I always get confused by that thing. It's not a negative feedback loop because you are reinforcing. It's a positive feedback loop, but the feedback is negative. So yeah, I think it's really, really important. And we talk about the power of environment and stuff as well. Like people are environment.
Yeah, or just like the power of visualizing. It's like that experiment where I think we touched on this before, but they had people imagine they were doing a workout every day or a couple times a week over 8 weeks, and their muscles developed, which highlights the connection between thought, imagination, and physical reaction. So that's pretty profound. I wonder if you're focusing on like an outcome that you haven't received yet. Maybe it's the success of your business, or it's you performing in a certain way. You're just you're influencing your unconscious in a similar manner, where it will condition your behavior just to seek out or become aware of them opportunities when they're in your environment. Kind of like, when you buy a car that you think no one else has, and you buy it and you see it everywhere.
Oh, there's another phenomenon that you'll probably know the name of. There's a phenomenon for that. I don't know, it's called Bader-Hoff minor or something phenomenon. Like you buy a red car, all you see is red cars. Yeah. No, that's a very interesting point, yeah. And it's the same in the negative as well.
Completely. It is. Yeah, it is. So I suppose, that be very careful if you're going to align with pessimistic people for business purposes.
Yeah. And I think most people would say, "Oh, I would never be involved with a pessimistic person." But like, this is an interesting exercise, one that I did myself. Ask yourself, you could be that person. Like, are you that person? Because many of us have very negative self-talk. We have a negativity bias, obviously. But are we putting that out in the world as well? Like, are we the person who sits down and bitches and moans all the time?
Yeah.
Like, I'm so, not that I'm super aware, but I'm so conscious of it now. in myself and other people that it's like a physical assault on me when someone sits down and starts like shiting on about how shit everything is.
Yeah.
I actually feel like it pulling me down. Whereas before, maybe I wasn't really aware of it. Like as I mentioned, the example of working on the docks or whatever, I subconsciously slip into that mindset myself. Now I'm really conscious of it, so I can feel it. So if someone sits down, you can almost feel off them like, oh, Jesus God, do I have to sit? You avoid those circumstances and situations now. Well, I do anyway.
Yeah.
And if you're entering into any sort of relationship, in this example, potentially a business relationship, you are setting yourself up for failure. So again, probably a similar situation like stress test that, meet them for coffee and see that they shine on.
Yeah. How do you identify that in yourself? You know, if you're wondering now, God, am I that person? What steps can you take to identify that? Maybe setting yourself a task to try catch yourself complain about whatever it is in conversation. Maybe writing down like that as a task and being like, I'm going to see how many times I catch myself complaining about something will have it show up in your awareness more.
Yeah.
Just like we're talking about the red car. When you see the red car or you buy the red car, you see it a lot more. So if you have that intention behind like trying to identify your own inclination to complain or be negative and like make it a game and become aware of it. Do you have any thoughts on how, you know, someone might identify that in themselves?
I like awareness. For me is really important on every topic I discuss. So awareness
Yeah.
is huge, and like you've had there's a few nice tools there. You can gamify it, writing it down. Sometimes being able to observe your thoughts written down can help you. An interesting one I find is observe how other people feel the longer the time they spend with you. So do people generally feel better when they spend time with you? And it's hard to see that unless you can remove yourself from the interaction. But just have a little look at people. Do they generally tend to be in a better mood when they leave?
Yeah.
When they're talking to you, are they engaged? Are they a little bit withdrawn? Now that can have a lot to do with them as well, but it can have a lot to do with you because your interaction with somebody is really, really important. I remember reading quite recently about I think it was in the context of dating, which I don't know why I was reading that because I'm not interested in dating, but the psychology of it is interesting because it's interaction between two people and how you create a sense of attraction. And like if you're picking business partners, it's the same thing. You want there to be an attraction there for the right reasons. And it was about making a conscious effort to find somebody else interesting. Because if you make a conscious effort, even if somebody else is a little bit negative or a little bit boring, the more interest you show in them, the more they tend to open up and drop these external defenses and barriers and shields. You kind of peel back a couple of layers. And then they tend to interact a little bit more positively with you, which makes you feel a little bit better. So you create a positive feedback loop there.
Yeah.
And that can then influence how that person feels. So now you're actively trying something that you know is going to make someone else feel better. So you're creating a more positive environment for everything. So that's really interesting. Like observe how you interact with people. Observe yourself, because like I'm a devil for this, being really bored and pissed off by fucking small talk. I avoid it at all costs. But now I'm like, okay, when I'm in a situation at a wedding when I'm sitting beside someone I don't really know,
Yeah.
and they're telling me a shit story, actively be interested in what they're saying. Even if you don't find it interesting,
Be engaged.
be interested. And you'll find that the more you're interested, the more they become interesting because they stop telling you shite and they're like, oh, he's actually listening to me here, and they give you a little bit more and it becomes a little bit more connected. And you're like, oh, okay, now this is interesting. And then you have a much more positive outcome there. So that's one thing I found quite helpful because I was really bad. And like Jill used to say to me, you're so obvious when you don't care. I'm like, but I find it really hard. And she's like, I know, but make an effort. And then I was learning about that. So now I make a bit more of an effort to be interested in the shit I don't find interesting, because then it becomes interesting because the person opens up a bit more because they feel accepted or engaged or liked. And I find that a very useful tool. So in terms of how to become a more positive person, that's probably helpful. In terms of how to detect if you are a negative person, if someone else is, I feel like we have a good radar for if someone's really negative. But ourselves, the point you made, awareness, I think, is a huge one. Build tools for building awareness around yourself in general will help you detect that, I think.
Nice.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Deadly. Yeah. We move on.
Let's do it.
We're flying here. We're about 40 minutes in, 45 minutes
lovely.
in. Yeah, we keep going. This one's a good one. Learn to sell, learn to build. If you can do both, you'll be unstoppable.
Yeah. I think two important skills that you mentioned, like building, could be programming, it could be building a business, but the ability to sell it is so crucial because you can build it and it could be the most amazing thing, but if you can't sell, it's not going to gain any traction. And we're always selling every moment. We're selling ourselves. So learning the skills of persuasion and how to sell your business or whatever it is might be even more important than the building factor, or just as important.
Can you elaborate on that point? We're always selling ourselves.
Just in every moment. We're like it's kind of like an actor, whether we are aware of it or not. Like we're constantly giving off influence to other people, consciously, unconsciously. It could be in our mood, it could be in our tone, in the words we use, like to relay it back to the pessimistic mindset or the optimistic mindset, how we make others feel. A lot of this happens at an unconscious level and a conscious level. When you see someone with charisma, they can capture your attention. That's like someone selling themselves to you. We're conveying ourselves or portraying ourselves in nearly every moment. And in some sense, that's us selling ourselves, whether we're aware of it or not. If that makes sense.
It does, yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. And why I'm really interested in this point is learning to sell and learning to build things. I'm trying to do both right now personally. Like whether or not you have a business, if you go for a job interview, you're selling yourself. If you are working in a job, you're trying to build the pieces within that role that are going to help you move to the next step. So you're constantly in that phase, no matter what you're doing. If you're in a relationship, again, I like to try and relate this away from the business sphere as well. If you're in a relationship with somebody, you're in a friendship, if you're in the gym or whatever, you're always trying to build something. If it's you, if it's competence, if it's a body, if it's a sense of connection. And then you're always looking to sell that as well. Because why do we build a body in general? I know it's because we feel good about ourselves, but we also want other people to find us attractive or appealing, or in some way find what we have done to be impressive, because it means we get more connection with that person. Even if it is, I want to be the biggest, strongest guy in the gym, it's because we want to be accepted. So we're trying to sell ourselves to other people on the basis of the things that we can do. In the context of wealth generation and business, I find this really interesting because, say when I started this business, I'm a creative kind of a guy. And I was like, I'll just create and they will come.
Yeah.
They fucking don't. Jesus, they don't come at all. No one knocks at the door. You really have to sell it. And then through the process of selling, you realize the weaknesses in what you've built. So you have to be better at building, because it's really hard to sell something that's shoddy. Unless you're a fucking snake oil or merchant or whatever like that. But it's really hard to ask somebody for money or investment for something if you don't really believe in it. So you have to get better at building the thing as well. And it's constant, because the more you sell it, the better it has to be. The better it is, the more you want to sell it. And it does sell itself to a certain degree, but like if I think about selling, I think about the obvious things like marketing, building community, copywriting, advertising, all the practical skills, but also then an ability to tell a story and connect with a person on an emotional level. And nowadays, what's even more important is to really relate to that person and give them an insight to who you are as opposed to what you do. Yeah. This whole idea of personal brand, which I know you're very interested in as well. Many companies are really adopting that now. They're starting podcasts, for example, to give people a behind the scenes look, to create more engagement. So the sell has become a completely different thing. But the build is still there as well. So you have to have something worth selling. So you can tell a nice story, but if it's horseshit, our friend the Liver King, you can tell a nice story. He's a great example of the storyteller. And we spoke about why it is attractive, because it's the hero archetype.
And the visuals, and that side of things.
Yeah.
It all ties into it, the whole package.
And obviously a very well thought out, curated brand and image to sell that's tied in with a story, and the story of the hero and the person who lives primally and the person who does all the right things and builds great connection and is what a man is supposed to be. Not subprimal, he's primal, all this kind of stuff. Unfortunately, was built on a foundation of mistruths and lies with the whole steroid thing. I won't get lost in that conversation now because there's lots of nuance there, but the selling part involves all of those different things. But again, you kind of must have both. And this is why I'm saying here, if you have both, you'll be unstoppable. If you have one, you could be pretty good. But if you have one, say you're excellent at selling, you might not be so good at building. So then you're not really self-sufficient, because you could sell your services, you're selling services to somebody else. And there is a train of thought saying you could make a lot of money by making other people a lot of money, which is absolutely true. But to be unstoppable, I think what he's referring to here, to be completely self-sufficient and unstoppable, you should develop both skills.
Yeah.
Don't just build and don't just sell. Because on the opposite side, I know plenty of people, and I was one of them, as I explained, who can build a nice product or a nice service or a nice community, whatever. But if nobody knows about it, or if you can't capture their minds and their imaginations, it may as well not exist.
Absolutely. And to think about that in terms of maybe a business point of view, you could build a website, offer an amazing service, but the website could have very poor copywriting, which is the words you're using to sell. The visual side of the website could be poor. How you navigate it could be have a lot of friction. So it's kind of simple, but we all know when we go onto a good website how it makes an impression on us straight away. We just think like automatically, oh, this is a website I can trust. This has authority because of the layout, how it's represented. Even before we dig in and see the people behind the website or what the company offers, etc. Or even if you go onto someone's profile on Instagram, the quality of their photos and footage and how it's shot or filters, etc., that influences us straight away in how we think about or how we perceive that page, that person, that product. And that's all selling. So I think if you're a business or you're a personal brand, it's considering how you're selling yourself, in the sense that you're coming across as an amateur. Does your content come across in an amateur way? Or what standard is your website at, or your page, or products, etc.?
You have a background in UI and UX, don't you, for a website?
No, I've studied it a bit.
Okay.
I've read into it, but I wouldn't say my background is in it. But I have an idea. I've just looked into it,
Yeah, I think you've more than an idea based on what you've talked about to me, but you're being a bit modest there. Where do you think in this spectrum your strengths lie, or strengths and interests?
In terms of
Building
and selling.
Yeah.
I suppose I have a bit of a background in selling, so I understand psychology and somewhat, and how to sell one-to-one, maybe how to sell in terms of how a website might look. In terms of building, I've got some skills with building websites or building online stores, like maybe using Shopify, etc. But it can all be developed, and that's the thing when what the internet has enabled. There's so many options for people to develop. Like one thing I'm looking into lately is copywriting and the importance of the words we use, which is something you take for granted when you go onto a website, but how the words are laid out, and like what you spoke about, making it personal, or using words that emit emotion in people. A lot of like selling is emotional, or a lot of buying is emotional. But yeah, how would you think about that yourself?
Well, my strengths definitely lay probably still lie to a degree in the building element, to a certain degree, because it's the creativity side of the building. The systemization side is something I had to really learn. And to be fair, and going back to this point, it's definitely massively improved and increased the quality of my business, the quality of my productivity, the standard of service everybody gets from the systemization point of view. That was a weakness. It's becoming more of a strength, and the creativity is always a strength of mine. But that's not enough, and I found out the hard way that's not enough.
Yeah.
So I've had to learn about the selling side, and there's a lot about the selling side I'm not comfortable with, even still to this day. The exchange of money and things like that, it's just an uncomfortable topic for whatever my biases or whatever, and I'm working through that as well. I'm aware of it and I'm working through that. I'm fascinated by the reason I built the business the way I did is because I'm fascinated. I think there's more coffee in the pot there.
Yeah, lovely.
I'm fascinated by helping other people tell their story, because I know so many people with amazing value to give without the skills to communicate it. So where I come in that picture is helping them communicate their value. So adding the sell to them, to their kind of Instagram
Yeah.
page or podcast or YouTube or whatever. There's an interesting expansion on this point as well. A lot of people talk about this. You'd be familiar with this as well. There's a couple of people in the copywriting space or writing space. Naval talks about it. There's a certain set of skills if you can develop, you'll never need, you'll never look for a job. Copywriting is a big one. Coding is a big one. Creating content is a big one.
Persuasion.
Persuasion is a big one. Marketing and persuasion is supposed to be linked in there as well.
Programming.
Yeah. So if you can develop those skills, they're transferable.
Game theory,
yeah. They're transferable across so many different industries. What I like about what I do is applicable to most businesses and brands nowadays. And I get to decide who I work with in terms of helping them tell their story. So something that aligns with my message. It's usually health or wellness based, usually fitness based. Those skills are areas as a solo entrepreneur, a solopreneur, whatever you want to call it. They're the skills that I pick to develop and have massively added productivity, influence, reach, weight to my company. And one thing I like to do is to present my stuff in a very professional way. So like on my Instagram page, most of it's highly, not that it's curated content, but it's well-produced content, because that's what I like to do, and it creates a good impression for people, and people pay me based on the quality of the content and stuff like that. I originally was the creative guy, and now I'm bolting other skills that I need onto that. Yeah. And every time I learn a skill, and like I seek out mentors and people to help me with this stuff, but every time I learn another skill, it levels up the entire thing, and it enhances my creativity because it helps me to communicate it more. It gives me more time to create and stuff like that. So that's how I would kind of look at that. That's why I really like this point.
Yeah, and they're both skills. That everyone can develop.
That's what he says. Learn here.
Yeah, and usually, from what I've read and understand, you develop them faster if you just pick a project. So if you decide on a project that you're gonna put your attention to and then learn the skills on the way, that can be incredibly effective in developing some of these skills.
That's where I can speak from experience.
Yeah.
At the start, I was the theory guy. Probably still am to a certain degree, but the theory guy. Yeah. This whole idea of mental masturbation. Read the book, watch the video, listen to the podcast, read the blog, have the conversation. It's done.
Yeah.
That's 1%. 99% is just doing it and learning on the job. Like, learning on the job is the best way, in my opinion, to do a lot of this stuff. Not everything, obviously. Don't learn heart surgery on the job. Like, don't do brain surgery. Don't learn that on the job. Although they do that. The medical model is usually watch one, assist one, do one. So you're pretty much in from the start. You watch one, and then you're assisting, and then you're doing. Learning on the job, I like it. And obviously, the way our brains learn and operate, actually doing the thing helps to cement all the different facets of it much quicker than reading about the thing. I was like that in school. Like, I could sit blankly and not get to, but once I applied it or did it myself, I was way better. I was terrible at studying. I was great at actually like the practical hands-on stuff, because I learned really quickly by doing hands-on stuff. But by just sitting reading about it, I don't learn. Like all these self-help books, I like them, but I think that's a bit of that mental masturbation. It gives me, I've done it now because I've read the book. Yeah. So maybe that's what I get from that. I don't necessarily implement a lot of the skills.
So what's an illusion of growth, kind of?
Yeah, an illusion of growth. But to your point, what I found super, super effective is just doing the thing.
Yeah.
And most of the people who help me or mentor me or coach me, they all say the same thing to me. It's like, you need to just start doing this thing. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't have this thing, and I need this piece of gear, and I haven't got this in line yet, and this isn't right, and this isn't perfect. And they're like, just do the thing.
Yeah.
And then I come back like a week later, and like, how'd you feel? I'm like, I got so much done. It's all done now. I've learned so much. And like, because you just fucking did the thing. Like,
yeah.
So I find that that's a really powerful way of doing it.
Yeah, it's good input.
We do one more?
Yeah, man. Let's go for it.
We've got about 10 minutes left to do one more. So the last one we will do today is arm yourself with specific knowledge, accountability, and leverage. Mr. Hendrick.
I'll let you take this one.
Oh, you want me to take this one? Oh, I'm on the spot now. Arm yourself with specific knowledge, accountability, and leverage. Okay.
Maybe we can kind of go through each one.
We'll riff this one. Yeah.
So specific knowledge. What's an example of specific knowledge?
Okay, so the way I would interpret specific knowledge, it's actually so interesting how these all tie into the previous ones. It's obviously designed it this way, but specific knowledge, general knowledge, let me refer back to the self-help books. A general idea of what self-help looks like, or habit formation, to be a bit more specific. Let's go back to James Clear. Most of us have a general knowledge of habit formation. Most of us have a general knowledge of nutrition, of training, of how much water we should eat, of how important sleep is. But you made a great point earlier on, which I'm going to let you elaborate on. ask me to present for 15 minutes. I won't steal your point. You can make this point because you made it very well to me earlier on. So most of us have a general idea of a topic, but how many of us have enough specific knowledge to actually present on that topic?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the point that we were just talking about earlier on is that bias. We often think we know a lot more than
What's the name of the
we
bias?
actually know. It's
Did you text it to me?
the Drugan Cregan.
The Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah, the Dunning-Kruger effect. That was a bit off.
You're close.
Which essentially is, what I just said. So, and one way to kind of think about it is how many topics would you be comfortable talking about without any information in front of you for 10 to 15 minutes. But yeah, specific knowledge, I like, you can be trained. Specific knowledge, general knowledge would be having the ability to maybe like set up a podcast, for example. That could maybe be considered general knowledge to a degree, but maybe specific knowledge is using your understanding of setting up a podcast and combining it with building a community. That could be specific because you're combining the two. So that, I think, is maybe what specific knowledge is. So it's having maybe the knowledge of one area, combining it with the knowledge of another area. So it could be like you have a general knowledge of nutrition, but maybe using your knowledge of nutrition and applying it to optimize someone for a certain sport could be specific knowledge. Or it could be, building a website could be general knowledge. Sales could be general knowledge, but perhaps combining the two is a specific knowledge, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm going to go a different direction because I agree with that. I'm going to add to that. So let's take the podcast example because this is what I deal with on a daily basis. Most people think, I could start a podcast. And they have a general knowledge of how a podcast works. I talk on a microphone. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
But when someone comes into me and I sit down with them for the first kind of consultation process and the coaching process, they're like, what the fuck? What is all of this stuff that we have to go through? Because we go on down to a really granular level about how we're going to brand this show, what we're going to call it, who we're going to speak to, how long episodes should be, what's all the data and metrics that surround that. When we're talking on microphone, that's a microphone. What's it plugged into? A cable. What type of cable is this? Where does it go? What's it plug into?
Yeah.
How do I sound the same as you? Why are we wearing headphones? These are all specific things that most people are like, I didn't even know that was part of the algorithm. I didn't even know that was part of the thing. I just knew I could do a podcast. You mentioned nutrition there. Most people know that we should eat more green vegetables.
Yeah.
Who knows what a green vegetable is? What's a cruciferous vegetable? What's the makeup of a cruciferous vegetable? How do all the different elements in that vegetable interact with your biology? What are the specific parts, vitamins, minerals, etc., that are acting in specific ways on your body? So, like, if I said to your point, stand up and talk about green vegetables for 15 minutes, I'd do that. 5 minutes in, where are you? You're still saying green vegetables are good for you. Yeah, but why are they good for you? Oh, because they're healthy. But why are they healthy? It's this, the 5 whys. You go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And most people get lost after like 3. So that's how I would view specific knowledge. I'm just going to just for clarity for people, the Dunning-Kruger effect. I just have it pulled up here.
Go for it.
This is not coming out of my head. The and Darren only introduced me to this earlier on, so I didn't know about it before. The Dunning-Kruger effect occurs when a person's lack of knowledge and skills in a certain area cause them to overestimate their own competence. By contrast, this effect also causes those who excel in a given area to think the task is simple for everyone and underestimate their relative abilities as well.
Yeah.
So I think most of us fall prey to the first part of that, where we have a little bit of knowledge. I've often said a little bit of knowledge is dangerous, and we think we know way more than we actually do.
Yeah.
Which is very general. So that's the first part, which is the specific knowledge. The next part is accountability. Well, what are your thoughts on that word?
I think accountability.
What does it mean to be accountable for you?
You could be accountable to yourself, writing down your goals, and then checking in at the end of the week to see what you completed. That's in a form of accountability. You could be accountable to your partner, business partners, where you commit to something, write it on a list, and you check in at a certain date to see if you've completed the task or not. You could have an accountability group where the purpose of the group is to keep each other accountable. or you could have an accountability coach who, you pay to check in and keep you on track. And I think that accountability has different tiers, but they all share the impact the potential impact of having accountability in your life can have on you. And maybe the importance of it is that it increases the probability of a successful outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with that. Is it accountability if there's no consequence? So, for example, I write down, by Friday, I want to have done 10,000 steps. I get to Friday, I've done 5,000 steps. Oh well.
Yeah.
I'll try again next week. Now, I do accept there's a certain amount of self-empathy and stuff there.
Yeah.
You don't always have to achieve exactly what we said we're going to achieve, or we're a failure. We're not a failure. But if there's no consequence, you mentioned one there is a consequence. If I pay somebody, now I'm financially invested. If I don't do what he's asked me to do or she's asked me to do, I've lost money.
Yeah.
I've wasted money.
But also, not just the money side of things, it's also showing up and admitting to someone that you didn't do it.
So shame is a consequence.
Shame is a consequence. And that could be even to yourself.
Yeah.
Having to acknowledge that. Maybe you don't recognize it consciously, but if you said you're going to do something and then you don't do it,
yeah,
you have to deal with the consequence of shame. But that consequence maybe exists on a spectrum. There's this website, I can't remember the name of it, but you can you pay, you put money into the website and you say you're going to do something online, and if you haven't done it, it automatically gives the money to a cause that you don't like.
Oh, no way.
You might be like, I'm going to do this said task. I'm going to commit to this. And if I don't do it by this certain day, this 20 euro is going to go to this organization that I don't like. And that's like a website that will organize that and lock the money in and release it if you don't do the task. So that's another form of accountability.
Yeah, 100%.
With the consequence being that your money goes to somewhere you don't want it to go.
I think that's a kind of a key. Unfortunately, I think it has to be a key part of the accountability process, because without it, we've no real motivation to not follow through.
Yeah.
And every form of accountability I've had from a mentor or a guide or a coach has been them showing me to myself, basically holding a mirror up to myself. So if I haven't had something done, they don't give a fuck. They don't care. But what they do is just hold a mirror up to myself, and then I come face to face with my own bullshit. And I speak to Brian about this a lot. That's painful. So that pain is the negative outcome for me. So it forces me to be more accountable. Now, we'd all love a situation we didn't need that. It's the carrot and stick argument, but I do need that, and most of us do need that in certain circumstances, to see my own shit and become aware of my own shit. And that's painful. And if I keep doing that thing or not doing that thing that I said I would or wouldn't do, it becomes more and more painful until you get to a point where you either just fuck the whole thing off altogether, or the pain forces you to evolve and adapt and become better. And it seems like a bit of a harsh model, but it's effective, very effective. And we live in a world where we don't like hard approaches to anything really anymore. But I believe there's absolutely a place for that. Personally, I believe there's a place for that with me versus me. If someone else starts giving me a hard time, not such a big fan of that model, because that can be very, very hard and difficult. And I'm not a big fan of anybody beating themselves up. However, holding yourself to account, I think, is very powerful. Yeah. And without some sort of negative side effect to not holding yourself to account, I think it's very, very hard. So holding that mirror up in front of yourself, or because oftentimes you can't hold it up in front of yourself. We're too clouded ourselves by our own emotions, or have our own protective mechanisms. To have somebody else constantly hold that mirror up for you in a way that they know is going to be productive and helpful, I find that a very effective way of being accountable to somebody else.
Absolutely, yeah. So how would someone who wants to develop accountability in their life, what are good starting steps for them?
I believe a coach is a really big help. I believe it's very hard to do a lot of these things by yourself at the start. I think oftentimes, not all the time, I think it's possible, but oftentimes we are very busy, very confused, very upset, very lost, and it's hard to really be accountable with ourselves, or to maintain a level of discipline or accountability for a period of time. That's why I think coaches are very effective. Like, for example, why do so many people go to personal trainers?
Yeah.
I know how to do sets and reps.
Yeah.
I can find on Google.
But the impact of having them standing looking over you or having to answer to them.
Yeah. And any good coach, a lot of my clients are coaches, a lot of my friends are coaches. Any good coach will do exactly what I just said. They'll just hold up a mirror up for you. And what they'll say is, and I do this actually, because I coach some of my clients with this kind of stuff. I will ask my clients at the start to help me lay out their goals and their steps, and it's nothing to me. I don't care what you want to do with your podcast or your content. What is your outcome? And they give me some bullshit answer usually at the start. I'm like, no. What actually do you want from this? And we get a little bit deeper then. They're like, do you know what? I want to have impact. I want to really add value to my community. I want to build something meaningful. And then they start to say things like, there's something in me I need to get out. I was like, okay, we write all this stuff down. I'm going to hold you to account to this stuff. If I get a feeling that you're straying off and you're chasing numbers, blah, 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 blah. So I just hold up the sheet that they gave me at the start. I was like, I didn't make this stuff. You did. You told me this is what you want. So there's two things wrong here. Either this has changed and we need to figure out why, or you're not doing it.
Yeah.
And why we're not doing it. So, and that's based on what they told me. So any fitness coach is the same. Any good fitness coach. It's not, you're a little pussy, you do this because of it. It's, you told me these were your goals and I know how to help you get there. Yeah. But in order for you to get there, these are the steps you need to take. Are you taking them? No. Well, let's maybe figure out why. And you're accountable to yourself, and I'll help you be accountable to yourself. I find that really effective. So my advice, I don't like giving advice, my advice would be, in any of these pursuits, find someone who's done it or is doing it or is trained to help other people do it, and ask them.
Yeah. And
pay them if needs be. It's a great investment.
Yeah, and that's having skin in the game is going to help psychologically as well.
That's another form of financial accountability.
Yeah,
100%.
Great.
And then our final word on this tweet is leverage. What do you think of that word?
So combining specific knowledge and accountability is going to help you grow to a place where you can then apply leverage. So I'm just thinking out loud, what you're doing here with the podcast is a form of specific knowledge, and as you grow your presence online and become more known to people, more sought after, but then that gives you more leverage. Also, maybe leverage could be when you get to what you could do is you could create a short course and put it online, and with the access to the people online, you can charge a small fee and sell it to the whole internet essentially. That's a form of leverage as well.
Yeah.
I think that's, leverage is, it's been able to do a lot with a little,
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right. I'm forming my own thoughts as well as you're talking now. I often think of leverage in like the practical, physical term of a leverage point, something about which something else is levered. Obviously, because it's leverage. And referring to Naval here, he often talks about there's three main areas you can leverage: capital, i.e. money, people, i.e. staff and employees, or content. And content would be the course, the social media, a way you can create something that reaches many people because we're leveraging the internet.
Yeah.
We're leveraging the skills that we have. We're leveraging, like I leverage my production skills here to reach multiple people with the podcast. We can have this conversation in a quiet room or on microphone, and I've built the skills to be able to do it on microphone. So I'm leveraging those skills and that knowledge. So I like how Naval breaks it into those kind of categories there. Leverage for me would be something that, an asset of some sort that you have that allows you to reach more people or more whatever, resources or whatever it might be. And the obvious one is money. Money is something you can leverage. You can leverage people. Leverage is a weird word as well. People get squirrely around the word leverage because if I'm leveraging you, that could be construed as negative. Oftentimes in the financial world, you're leveraging positions. That can be construed as negative because you're taking advantage of something. But it doesn't have to be negative. I think we have a negative bias with that word. You can leverage somebody positively. Like you could leverage me and my platform for more reach for you.
Yeah.
I could do the same thing with you.
Or if you have a personal brand, this may be what is attractive for people building personal brands. Because then they leverage their authority to access a wider audience, to sell products or sell services, and they're not dependable on working for someone else or working for a company. And as their audience grows, they have more leverage with their time and their resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And time is a big thing that you mentioned. I'm glad you mentioned that, because the whole point of this entire thread here is to leverage your money for time. That's what Naval talks about, and that's wealth. That formula equals wealth.
Yeah.
I've enough money to buy the time that I want, to do the things that I want, so I can leverage the money. If I don't have any money, I have no leverage. If I have no time, I have no leverage. So you're trying to use these different assets, develop the assets, i.e. skills or capital or people, community, whatever, and then use that to give yourself the things that you want. If you can do that in a way that benefits everybody, that's even better. For example, you coming on this podcast benefits me because I get to have a great conversation.
Yeah.
We get to create this content together. Benefits you because you reach an audience. There's benefit to the audience because they get this information.
Yeah.
That's a good form of leverage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or you could leverage people in a negative manner. And if you're negative people in a negative manner, I mean, you're still getting the outcome, but it's not a win-win-win all around. So I think we're all trying to generate leverage. Most people in life are trying to generate leverage. If you're trying to earn more money than you spend, you're in this world of trying to generate leverage because you're earning more money so you can go on holidays or buy the things you want or spend the time you want with the people that you want. So that's a form of leverage. And yeah, again, Naval has broken it down nicely into those categories, and I often think about those categories because like, do I have loads of money? No. Do I have loads of people working for me? No. But I have the ability to create content and have a platform and have an audience and have a community. There's an area that I can leverage by adding value, growing my, as you said, my brand, the awareness, and then people come to me and they pay me for my service. So I'm like, okay, that's where, and the more people that come and pay, the bigger the pile of money gets, and the more I can leverage that to grow the business even more or invest it in things that I want to do. So that's an area I often think about. So it's really powerful. And if you combine yourself with all, we've spent about 20 minutes talking about those three different words. Yeah. If you can have that specific knowledge, be accountable to yourself or to somebody else, create that system where you're accountable. So there's a more rigid set of guidelines, especially in the world of business and entrepreneurship. There are a lot less guidelines. If you're working in a formal structure, there's a lot more guidelines for you. Yeah. I'm not saying it's easy, but there's a general pathway. Don't step outside these lines. Yeah. Here's what you do from your 9 to 5. Here's the expectations for week, for month, for year. There's some guidelines there. Work for yourself. Wake up in the morning. What do I do now? Might make a coffee. Should I send that email? No. Yeah. There's a lot less guidelines, so having the accountability is massive, and then generating more leverage. Like those three things, if you can build those in a way that you're getting 1% better every day and growing the compound interest in those things, your leverage just increases exponentially. I feel.
And you're all that combined, you're no doubt increasing the probability of the desired outcome coming true.
It's a numbers game.
Getting rich without getting lucky.
Get rich without getting lucky, people. Darren, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks very much.
We made our way through. How many did we get through there? We made our way through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5
yeah,
today.
Lovely.
And I think we're over the hour, about an hour and 10 minutes, but
grand.
It was enjoyable. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did. Thanks very much. More food for thought. Great.
Before I let you go, I thought I was going to let you off the hook here. I'll let you explain. You have something coming up. You're working on a project.
Yeah.
So tell us about your project.
No, look, I'll leave it at that. I'll put in the notes.
I'm gonna hold you to account here because you talk about accountability. So Darren has been and is on a journey. As I often talk about, Darren is very well versed in the world of personal development, habit formation. You're quite a talented copywriter, and you have a massive interest in growing your personal brand and building a community and adding value, which you're already doing with me anyway. Yeah. So you're looking to expand that based on everything we just spoke about here. And the first step in people getting involved in this project is your newsletter.
Yeah, look, I'm going to publish a newsletter just about my own journey, some thoughts and different topics around maybe like technology and personal development and other topics that I'm interested in. So, I'll put some information in the show notes, and if you're interested in following along, please feel free.
I would definitely recommend. I know people think about newsletters. I'm signed up as to several newsletters that add so much value to my life.
Absolutely.
I'm already signed up to yours now. Waiting for my first email to get into that inbox there. I would highly recommend, because you can always unsubscribe. If people don't like the content, unsubscribe. I would highly recommend people subscribe. I'm going to add the links, as you said, in the show notes. I'll put it up on Instagram. I'll add a few links in the stories and stuff like that. Sign up, and we are all very excited to
appreciate it.
To engage with the content.
Thanks, man. Yeah, nice one.
Pleasure. See you next time.